I want to preface this video by saying that I really like Elden Ring. That said, I have a bit of a gripe with this game, as a speedrunner and as a no-hit runner. I've been playing the game pretty much constantly since it came out about 6 or 7 months ago, and I think I finally am able to put my finger on the reason why I haven't been enjoying running this game as much as I enjoyed running Sekiro or Dark Souls 3 before it. I think that there are a lot of things that can and have been said, nitpicking at little design choices here and there, whether it's the movement, the gameplay, the pacing, the bosses. But for me, I think it boils down to 2 things: shortcuts and upgrade materials. If you're familiar with other From Software speedruns, you may know that, in many cases, the objective is to get a strong, powerful weapon upgraded as early as possible. And because that's the most optimal way to play the game, it results in a speedrun that is very boring. This isn't to say that the game overall is boring, but it does result in the dreaded setup split. If you don't know what the setup split is, it is the section of the game where if you're doing a speedrun or a no-hit run, you are setting up your character. This hasn't historically been a very long section of the game, and if it has, it's never really been at the very beginning of a run. In Elden Ring, this setup split is the very first split of the game, and it's gonna take you about 20 to 30 minutes. That means on every run, if you want to play as optimally as you can, you don't get to fight your first boss until 20 or 30 minutes into the run. And that's on a fast route. In Dark Souls 3, by the 20-minute mark, you would almost be heading into Irithyll. In Sekiro, you'd be done with Genichiro and Corrupted Monk, and you'd probably be well on your way to Guardian Ape. But in Elden Ring, we spend that time getting buffs, getting talismans, getting upgrade materials, and getting probably the most busted weapon in any Souls game. Now, this doesn't necessarily make Elden Ring a worse game by any stretch. If anything, it's an issue with speedrunning or trying to play optimally. When these games were made, they weren't made with speedrunning or no-hit running or any other kind of challenge runs in mind particularly. But it is still something that communities have come together around and something that people look to for fun, which is why it's such a shame that these runs have been so negatively impacted by the way that the world is laid out. You might be thinking I'm just talking about the open world design and how it doesn't really lend itself to a speedrun very well, but it's not that necessarily. In fact, there are about 3 or 4 very specific pieces of this game that create such a terrible speedrun. And this small, unassuming bridge is the first. To our left, we have Stormvale Castle, Margit the Fell Omen, Godric the Grafted, and in front of us, we have Liurnia. If this bridge didn't exist, if we couldn't take this shortcut, we would have to fight Margit and Godric right now. That bridge is one of a few reasons why our first boss fight isn't until the 30-minute mark. Without that bridge, the best weapon for this run would probably be the Bloodhound's Fang, which we could get almost right away. But because that bridge does exist, it takes us 30 minutes to get our character set up. The other piece of this is that it means we have to do very high skill running sections very late in the game, meaning sometimes we will play the game for 20 or 30 minutes just to have to reset right away anyways. And so that bridge prevents a really cool Margit and Godric fight that would have really done wonders splitting up the setup in this game. But unfortunately, we have to do all of our setup all at once. So it is important to note that not every shortcut is a bad thing. In fact, I think Liurnia is one of the best areas in the game because of its many shortcuts to get to Raya Lucaria. On a first playthrough, you can take your time getting around, but because of these way gates, we can get everywhere we need to get to in just a matter of a minute or 2. So the interesting reality that has dawned on me as I've been recording this video is that all of my problems with Elden Ring can be linked to one location. It's the reason that the bridge in Limgrave is a problem. It's the reason that the Virgin Abductor here is a huge problem. It's the same reason that Raya is a problem and that the Dectus Lift is a problem. The thing that links all of these problems together is Volcano Manor. Volcano Manor not only holds one of the most overpowered weapons in Elden Ring, it also holds 3 of the required materials to upgrade it to max level. Not to mention the fact that it's home to the one major boss skip that From Software hasn't patched out yet, the Godskin Noble skip. And so on a speedrun or a no-hit run, it's worth it to spend 30 minutes coming here, all to get some upgrade materials and a weapon that'll make the rest of the game that much faster. The weapon I'm referring to is the Serpent Hunter. It's kind of like the Storm Ruler of this game, the weapon that you would use against Yorn the Giant in Dark Souls 3. It was considered a gimmick weapon, and most people considered it a gimmick weapon in this game too, until they took it out of the boss arena and pressed R2. That said, we're just gonna pretend that Volcano Manor doesn't exist for now. Which brings me to my next issue running this game. The Grand Lift of Dectus is the path that runners take whenever they can't use the Abductor Virgin in Raya Lucaria for whatever reason, such as on a no-hit run. However, it does unfortunately require going to 2 separate corners of the map to get the Dectus medallions, which puts another 5 or 6 minutes on the beginning of what is an already long setup split. And so, what would we do if the Dectus lift didn't exist? We would be forced to take the ruin-strewn precipice path in order to get to the Altus Plateau. In doing so, we would see yet another boss fight early on in our run that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. Although the precipice isn't exactly quick, from this point forward the run is actually pretty fun and pretty linear. There are some slow points here on Altus Plateau and then again in Mountaintop of the Giants. But between those slow areas is potentially some of the highest density of bosses that you will find in any From Software game. What with Draconic Tree Sentinel, Golden Godfrey, and Morgott, and then again with Fire Giant, Godskin Duo, Malekith, Gideon, Hoaraloo, and Elden Beast. And so if I could just ask Miyazaki one favor to make this game into an incredible speedrunning game, it would be this. Please, I'm begging you, just delete Volcano Manor.